This is the topic for our discussion today, integrating various networking tools in teaching online, ensuring more learner participation, learner choice, and autonomy. Uh, Incidentally, I had done a workshop with some teachers. This was an interesting topic, and I'm almost redoing this session. Uh, let's move on. Uh, you know, all right. This was uh, Times of India, 10th May 2020, and I want you to carefully look at this very interesting graph. Losing Our Minds on Social Media was the title, and you've been given two axes. Vertical axis is intelligence, and horizontal axis is confidence. And if you carefully see, uh, if you go higher on intelligence, uh, you are lesser on the confidence axis. So this graph primarily is trying to say that lesser the intelligence, more terrible the behavior. I mean, this is about how we are using social networking platforms at times irresponsibly. So when the intelligence level is high, the behavior demonstrated, this was a survey conducted by Times of India, the behavior was acceptable. When you go slightly lower on intelligence, the higher on confidence, behavior is ideal. And then, if your intelligence, if you further go down on intelligence, the confidence is more. And at times, our social networking behavior becomes terrible. I am not referring to any particular fact, but the point that I'm trying to make here is social media sometimes is stigmatized. And as I opened my session, all of us look at social media as a waste of time. At times, people misuse this platform to over exercise what is otherwise a democratic right of being free to speak your mind out, the freedom of speech. But then every time we say freedom, freedom brings along some responsibility, uh, some adherence to the norms that we set. So with this, I think we begin our discussion that all of us, particularly teachers, look at social networking tools, or social networking websites, social media, if I put it that way, with an angry frown as these are the provisions of wasting time. And as I said in the beginning, we keep telling our students that keep away from social media, try and focus on your studies. Today, I'm going to discuss how are we going to leverage the universality, the popularity, and the massive participation of people, particularly students, at young age. We're talking about, I mean, this is an interaction with college teachers. So college going students are more participating in social media. I would show you some of the very interesting statistics. It's very current. Look at it is this is the data of April 2020 of 7.77 billion. Uh, you would see that this is the total population. Uh, you have other factors also mentioned, but I'm more concerned about trying to visualize, trying to quantify how much of social media use is becoming uh, so popular worldwide. So of 7.7 billion, you have 5.6 billion, that is 66% of the population, who use phones, mobile phones. Internet user comes to about 4.57 billion, 60% of the world population. And active social media users are at about 3.81 billion. You can imagine the kind of participation that we see, particularly in social media and social networking tools. Here is another very interesting statistics, again as current as April 2020, of 4.57 billion. You see this 59% of the population, uh, world population, is using internet. Within that, there is a continuous growth of about 7.1%. And average time one spends on internet is close to 6 hours, more than 6 hours. Now, this tells you that how much of technology has got intermingled into our day-to-day life. Here is mobile internet use. Mobile internet use obviously is increasing day by day, and in the time of COVID, for example, entire education and a lot of other services are online, and therefore there's a continuous exponential growth in the use of internet on mobile. But total number of mobile internet users are at about 4.20 billion. Mobile internet users as a percentage of the total internet users is about, look, it's whooping 92. And then you have share of all internet users accessing via smartphone, 91%. Share of all internet users accessing via feature phone, but just a very small population, about 3.2. Average daily time spent using internet on mobile devices is more than 3 hours. So this tells us how the world is moving as far as internet, uh, ICT, that is computer technology, and social networking websites that we're using. Here again, you have social media use around the world. Total number of active social media users are at about 3.81, 49% of the population, continuous growth of about 8.7. Uh, so this tells you the story of how in first place we're using internet and how social media website or social networking tools, what is the level of usage. Uh, this is an interesting statistics that show countries using Facebook, again, April 2020, and the number is in millions. You can imagine India leading the way, about 280 million users, for example, continuously uh, use Facebook alone. So this is the statistics which gives us some idea about how, in the first place, internet is used, and then how social networking tools and social networking websites are used. We had made the definition of online learning yesterday. We had talked about synchronous. We had talked about asynchronous. Mm, these are our popular networking tools. We have Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, Twitter. Uh, there are education networking websites like Edmodo, for example. We have business networking website, dedicated business web networking websites like LinkedIn, for example. Google Classroom allows us the educational networking. But largely, I would say when we say social networking and social media behavior, it is mostly around Facebook, uh, WhatsApp, and Instagram. Twitter is again a little more formal social networking tool. Admodo and Google Classroom. I'm sure each one of us at least know that these phenomena exist, like Admodo and Google Classroom, and a lot of us have used them. So this is largely our area of concern. And I want to draw your attention to the fact that, we are trying to discuss how to use these very dedicated tools of social networking for the benefit of education in teaching and learning, and how we can leverage the massive participation in social networking, uh, leveraging it to our day-to-day teaching and learning, and how amazing it would be if we are in a position to leverage these tools which are participated by all in the world. I mean, a lot of this, it's the story is endless. This is the social media landscape and uh, application of networking tools in education. Now, I'm coming to education and then we'll go to teaching and learning. When we say social uh, or networking tools, they're primarily used for three major functions in education. One of the first primary use of social networking is for educational marketing. Educational marketing, particularly, but when you look at networking tools, they are largely used as one of the most preferred platforms for advertising. You're on a Facebook, you're on an Instagram, you're on a WhatsApp, WhatsApp being more a personalized interaction. But when you are on a Facebook or Instagram, you continuously see various uh, you know advertisers displaying their content, lucrative content. At times there are games you are invited, and then those games lead you to various uh, other content. And we live in an era of algorithms, and these algorithms are the spying mechanisms which are used by advertisers to to know about the human behavior. And then there are targeted advertisement to the age groups. So there would be targeted advertisements for school going children, then for adults, for the aged population. uh, you would be shocked to know that you are continuously, your entire online behavior is continuously monitored by algorithms. In Homo Deus and 21 lessons from 21st century. Again, I'm bringing Yuval Noah Harari, but then he's someone who has talked a lot about this algorithm now deciding everything about mankind. So your behavior is manipulated by the marketers. For example, you search for a wristwatch. You search for a tag Heuer wristwatch in Google, and you go to FB or you go to any website which provides free content. You will have the tickers of these watches. So these advertisers would then follow you if you're on online, and if they come to know that this gentleman is looking for a watch, all of them, these algorithms would continuously monitor your behavior, would keep manipulating your choice. So that is the larger use of social networking websites as far as advertising is concerned. But I'm more interested in discussing educational marketing. So, when you see this, educational institutions, similarly, the way Pepsi and Coke and other multinationals use uh, social networking tools, when immediately after the results are out, you will have students, uh, you will have two lions standing with the first rank holder with 99.99 percentile. Uh, all kinds of interesting advertising gimmick is seen immediately after the results are out. Each school will have first top 10 and percentile and all kinds of very funny, attractive visuals. So networking tools are used for marketing, educational marketing. Very interestingly, these tools are also used for educational management and administration. So each school, each college, for example, will have its own official staff uh, a group of group on WhatsApp, for example, where the principal keeps putting notices. Now, these educational management tools, for example, have come more on WhatsApp groups where administrators would put a notice and the entire group. There are groups with the admin having control of putting the content. There are interactive groups. Uh, there are groups. Edmodo, for example, is used for educational management where parents can interact with teachers. Uh, so, uh, Social networking, networking tools are used for marketing in education. They're used in educational management and administration if there is an urgent message to be passed on to everyone outside college or school timing. What options do you have? You think of texting everyone, the entire staff, some urgent message. And we are now living in the time, for example, where urgent messages are the need of the hour. The management would say that because of the growing cases in our area, tomorrow onwards we're working from home. Now, if that message is to be given, I think a WhatsApp group where each teacher is, put into the group becomes a handy tool for administration. I'm more interested in discussing using networking tools for teaching and learning. And I have, uh, worked hard to bring in some research content, some research papers that I would share with you. But let's understand what are the benefits of networking tools or social networking websites. One of the first benefits that I see is the universality. It's universal. Everyone knows about it. I mean, it would be difficult for us to find out a person who doesn't know what is Facebook. And we have seen instances where people without education are now using Facebook. They have one or two posts every day. So it's universal. It is used by all. Age is no bar, community is no bar, social status is no bar, education is no bar. So these social networking tools are universal. And because they are universal, they're familiar. Young kids who have barely learned to walk, you would find them saying the nursery rhymes, and you would see them crying for the father's or mother's mobile. And guess what would they be doing? They would be on some networking tools. School going kids, for example, have their groups, so they're familiar. As I said, even an auto driver who probably may not have any education is familiar with WhatsApp, is familiar with Facebook, is familiar with Instagram and Twitter. They're very convenient in the sense that it's convenient to everyone. When we talk of Zoom, for example, a lot of people would say that I don't know how to use Zoom. They would say probably I am not familiar with Google Meet, but because of universality and familiarity, it is convenient. Everyone, if you say that I'm going to post a message forming a group to your students, none of the students would say that I'm not familiar with WhatsApp or Instagram. It allows you audio visual interactivity. You can make video calls using WhatsApp. Uh, it allows collaborative endeavors. So you can do a lot of collaborative work, uh, and we're going to discuss these things in detail. They are anytime, anywhere tools. So time is no bar. For example, they are available 24/7. Uh, So this is something that we need to really understand, that these social networking tools uh, are not just waste of time. They have some very concrete benefits uh, to be offered. The verbal, non-verbal communication is possible. Now, this is something. This is one reason why everyone is using social networking tools. For the first time, text and the emoticons create a digital text where verbal and non-verbal is available. So when you say hi, you can decide how broad should be your smile. Uh, Hi and an angry face, hi and a frowning face. So it gives you some space for expressing your emotions. Obviously, they are uh, allowing you to network. It has no additional cost beyond the package someone has bought. Most importantly, you won't have to train people to how to use, for example, WhatsApp, or how to use Facebook or Instagram. Um, and they are informal they have both formal and informal interaction possible, but it is more informal. And we all know that you have more participation when you're talking about informal areas. Now I'm coming to a very concrete uh, discussion, and to be able to very confidently give you some examples. What I've done is I have chosen some 7 to 8 research papers published, and these research papers primarily discuss how these networking tools, how these social uh, networking tools can be used for the educational benefits. Uh, this is an interesting paper. If you read, it is by Professor Atanu Bhattacharya and Kiran Chauhan. Professor Atanu Bhattacharya is scheduled to speak tomorrow, and he's a friend, philosopher, and a guide. Kiran Chauhan is a close friend. This paper has been cited by good number of people, good paper, and I've kept these papers for you. Uh, just when the session is over, uh, go and read this paper. This is my very humble request. These papers would tell you in detail, because all of these are empirical researches telling you how primarily WhatsApp is my focus, because that is something that all of us use. Uh, Augmenting learner autonomy through blogging. Now, here, this was an experimental research where learners were asked to write their own blogs. Uh, the aim was to, uh, generate more autonomy, and augmenting learner autonomy. These are the findings. And interesting findings, they say majority of the students were unaware of blogging. Blogs uh, are popular, but because you have to write a blog on your own, not many of us would take to blogging. But there are thousands of people who take to blogging day in and day out, because these are informal digital diaries. These are more convenient ways of expressing your ideas about various things. They were unaware. More, the research finding also says that they had to be more aware of developing interaction with the virtual space. So when we say talking about interaction with virtual space, interaction with virtual space is in English today. Well, there are linguistic options, but more or less it is in English. And this was an exercise in enhancing linguistic skills of the students. Uh, Students more autonomous, since they had to create and edit their own blogs to make them attractive enough for others to visit. So there was a creative challenge also, and they had to be more autonomous in deciding what content to display, deciding what language to use, uh, using creative features so that people are attracted and read. The assigned topic also ensured that within the strict assessment necessities of Indian universities, evaluation system. Well, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, I had to abruptly disappear because, as you could see, I was having a glass of water around.
Okay.
This is an advice to everyone who is listening to me. When you are doing an online session, don't keep a glass of water near you. Out of an accident, it's spelt over my screen, and I had to abruptly disappear to save the screen and all that.
Okay,
Uh,
sir.
really
You
sorry
can
for inconvenience. Really sorry for inconvenience, but then we move ahead and
yes.
uh, so connecting back to what I was saying was we were talking about how blogging can be used as one very interesting activity where the social networking tools can enhance the teaching and learning, and this was an interesting example of that particular phenomena. I have one more paper to share with you, and that paper is discussing actually online teacher student interactions using WhatsApp in a law course. Now, I mean, WhatsApp can be used uh, in teaching and learning any aspect. I'm giving different examples. I have some examples also from a language perspective, some interesting examples again. And again, these examples are uh, the part of the concrete research that has gone past. Uh, let's look at this. As the title goes, online teacher-student interaction using WhatsApp in a law course. So, what happens here? There's a sample size is about 166 students. Online role play, plaintiffs, defendants, and judges. Uh, WhatsApp groups were formed, monitored by teachers. So now this is, we have all done role plays in our classrooms, and we have seen how beneficial these role plays are when we think of them as the activity in a class. Because if we are conducting class in monologue, if you're continuously talking to students, at times it gets heavy on them, it becomes monotonous, and their participation is not as much as when probably they are a part of an activity. And every time you announce an activity in the classroom, you would see that these eyes light up and everyone wants to participate because they want they listening actually is a painful exercise. And I'm sorry you're going through this pain, but with the realization that there's some gain if you're taking this pain. A lot of us sometimes feel that in classes which are bigger, activities are not possible. It gets noisy, class becomes unruly. These are some of the problems that go with conducting activities in classrooms. But look at this, if you create a role play using WhatsApp, it creates amazing dynamics. And as I said, please find out these papers and read them. They are interesting within themselves. So here, the role play is played using WhatsApp groups where teacher remains the monitor. So plaintiff and defendants and judges will have their arguments, counter arguments, and the judgment would be passed. What would interest all of us is that this is not time bound. No, it is not something that a lot of times when we do activities with a lot of students, it's difficult to. I mean, you can't complete that activity within 45 minutes, 1 hour's time. Now, this as an activity can go on for 2, 3, 4, 5 days, depending on how long do you want to prolong it. So this is an interesting example of how WhatsApp can be used for now. It's not just law students. I think we can think of creating role play in English language, English literature. If you are from engineering, the same activity can be used for engineering too. Uh, Effectivity. This is one more very interesting paper. Effectivity of e-learning through WhatsApp as a teaching and learning tool. Uh, let's see what was this experiment and how this was again. It's good news that this is language teaching was seen here. Uh, the method says two groups of students were taught the same topics by two different teaching learning activities. That is through WhatsApp. So one group learns through WhatsApp and the other group learns through didactic lecture. And this was a language teaching kind of a course. We don't really have time to discuss everything in detail because there's so many other things which are waiting to be discussed. But as I said, I have put the title of papers using which you can find them out. But what was the result? Result was WhatsApp groups, where WhatsApp was used as a learning tool. The marks varied between 5 to 20, and didactic lectures, for example, score varied from 3 to 17.5 marks. So there was an obvious difference in the performance, when WhatsApp. Now, when we say WhatsApp, we are not limiting ourselves just to WhatsApp. We can use any one of these social networking tools which is available. The conclusions say constant availability of facilitator and learning anytime, anywhere made WhatsApp group or WhatsApp as a tool for learning group more productive, has made WhatsApp a new and convenient tool. There were a few disadvantages, obviously. No, nothing is, there's this Japanese symbol of yin and yang. So there's always something bad in good, and there's always something good in bad. So, when you talk of social networking tools, you will have flooding of messages and then sharing of unnecessary content. We are all familiar with good morning and quotations being slapped on our faces every time we hold our cell phones. So this was a very interesting experiment, and that was very nicely conducted, using WhatsApp to extend learning in a blended classroom. Now, let's understand what was this entire experiment, if you put it that way. Method: a group of students were given instruction in classroom. The group was asked to form WhatsApp group for discussing course related issues, content, difficulties, assignments, exams, etc. And students were asked to write their reflection on the usefulness of the group. Now, this is something that allowed students to interact in an informal way about every aspect of course content and other difficulties that they were facing. Conclusion: the students appreciated the WhatsApp platform in a way that it provided them with the opportunity to actually use language in an authentic content. A total of about 574 messages were contributed by the 6 students and a lecturer. All students agreed to have been benefited from this exercise. These are small experiments, but if they become continuous feature, think of a role play, for example. Think of asking students to write blogs. Think of delivering a whole course using a WhatsApp or any other social networking tool. Now, if this becomes a regular feature, you can imagine how beneficial this entire exercise can be. Now, this is of a great interest to me. As I was discussing it with the organizers, I'm given to understand that many of you who are attending this particular session are from the language ELT background, are the language teachers. Now, look at this. This activity uses text, photo, video, audio, and emojis, all of them for language teaching. The first activity is text and text. Gap feeling. A very common fill in the blank is an exercise for assessment that we've been using. How about using it in a way which is prescribed here? One student looks through their textbook and chooses a sentence. The student writes the sentence but leaves out one word using the underscore in its place. They send this to their WhatsApp buddy. That student needs to send back the missing word. Now, look at the participative nature of this particular exercise. And what is very important, if it is used for language teaching, it can be used across the age groups and competencies. Uh, Incorrect sentence, one student looks through their textbook and chooses a sentence. They write the sentence, but make a mistake of grammar, spelling, or vocabulary. They send this to their buddy for correction. The students need to send back the correction. Odd one out. Now, these are all simple looking but participative, integrating social networking tools in our day-to-day learning. And I'm sure that students would be happy to participate in this. Only that they need to be motivated, because as in previous study, it was mentioned that there are disadvantages of using social networking for teaching, because you'll have to motivate your students to remain focused, because then there are sufficient number of provisions within social networking websites to get derailed into conversations and chattings which are not productive. But this is productive chatting. This is productive social networking, and that is what I have been trying to convey within uh, some time. How do you spell can be an activity. Now this is uh, audio and text, both is possible. One student sends a recorded message, how do you spell, and then leaves a word, and the other person gives an answer in a text or in an audio. This exercise is also possible in audio, two-way audio exercise. The question is asked in audio, recorded audio, and response is also given in recorded audio. Distance interview. One student records questions that they want to ask their buddy. They send these one at a time. The other student records and sends back the answers. Again, this is an activity which is done uh, on audio form, but this can be done in a textual form also, depending on what skill of language do you actually want to improve. You then have audio diaries. Students record what they are doing at different times of the day. They can compare and see how similar or different their days are, or they can share it with others if they wish. This is an interesting exercise which can enhance the communicative competence of our learners. You know, one of the challenges when we are teaching languages, get them to speak, get them to generate some output of language while writing and while speaking. And a lot of times we're struggling, with ways in which we can put them on expressive mode. Now, these exercises, though they look very simple, but then if they are effectively conducted using social networking tools or networking tools, they can give amazing results. uh, we then have English in my community. Students take a photo of examples of English. They say written around in their community and share it in the group. Now we live in a world which operates only in English language. You see the advertising hoardings, about 95% of the hoardings are in English. You see the boards hanging on the showrooms and shops, they are in English. Most of the simple instructions which are given, they're in English. And a lot of times there are gross errors in what you see as displayed in terms of English language. So if they click, you can further modify this exercise into making an exercise where they find out faults with English that is used in advertising and in the commercial arena. You go to the stationery, you will find all kinds of spellings. Even at urinals, ladies and gents, I have seen all kinds of spellings used. So, the idea is that these are new things which would keep the learners motivated. It is at times novelty, when we are teaching language. If we start being redundant, for example, if we use those classical grammar translation exercises in a classroom, we ask them to fill in the blanks, or we ask them to translate, or we ask them to write essays. They have gone redundant before ages. And this is just one set of ideas. Believe me, when you're talking about integrating networking tools in teaching and learning, there is enormous space for innovation. You can sit down and modify these activities according to your own creativity. But the idea is that they are integrated. English in my 30-second presentation. Now, these are becoming some uh, high level language proficiency activities, all distance interview, for example, which is audio in nature. And every time we're teaching language, our problem is that the students don't speak. You ask them to write an essay, they'll do that. Because while speaking, they show a lot of inhibition and hesitation. There are these psychological issues. And a lot of times, I think when you're teaching language, you're more a counselor, to tell them that, well, there would be errors, there would be mistakes, but then speak. It is when you start speaking, making mistakes, there is a chance that you will speak correct English. Madam, is it going all good? Audio, visually? All
Yes,
right.
both perfect. Both are perfect.
Thank you. Thank you. Barring that accident, which took, I don't know how many minutes, 5 minutes?
Uh, yes, still we have some time.
Fine, fine, fine. I think, how long do I have? When, when do you want me to finish my session?
By 4:10 or 10:15, 4:15 will be okay, sir.
Fine. So we have 25 minutes if I'm not wrong. Yeah. Let's move on. So the point I was trying to make here was that these are some of the activities which look so simple, but if they are done effectively using social networking platforms, primarily WhatsApp, it can give enormous results, and I have been into language teaching for years. I can say it with a lot of confidence that these activities can light up your classes, light up your students' enthusiasm, which is otherwise a rare commodity when you're teaching them. 30-second presentation, students prepare and record a 30-second presentation on topic of their choice. Now, this is, as I said, it these are activities where you would need high level of language proficiency, and students, this 30 seconds can then be extended to 2 minutes, 3 minutes. 30 seconds could just be the beginning. It's one or two statements. These activities are suggested for very young learners, but as I said, we can modify them. This 30 seconds, if you are thinking of a college class, can be 30 minutes. Why not? 10 minutes, 5 minutes, depending on the competence of the learner. Tour guide. Students make short videos of places they know well. This could be their house, neighborhood, school, etc. They could either give the commentary as they film, or one student could be presenter while the other does the filming. So look at the collaborative nature of this activity. I mean, these dynamics can be varied. You can have two students recording two separate clips and two others doing the narration. The group dynamics can be any. What's in your bag or packet can be an exercise. These are all expressive exercise where we are aiming at generating some kind of linguistic output. And this combination, audio, visual, and then it's taking place in social media, makes them very interesting activities by themselves. Create a picture dictionary. Now, this again is a very, very interesting exercise where students click a picture, write down, the word in English, write its meaning. This is a very recent study that I have known. Again, Professor Bhattacharya is featuring. Uh, so, mobile technology and everyday practices, an exploratory study in the potential for teaching learning of English in Gujarat. So, how mobile technologies, in our day-to-day life. So now when we're saying mobile technologies, most of the times we're talking about social networking websites. This was a British Council project recently concluded, and I had the fortune of going through the conclusions. Uh, these are the findings. Mobile technology has a significant potential in both teaching and learning. Needs to be supplemented with institutional support and a robust ICT policy within the institution as teachers exposure to technology and teachers exposure to technology. So this study, as I said, has been conducted in Gujarat. They say that mobile technology has significant potential, and we could see in few other research papers that I was sharing with you. When I was thinking of creating a presentation on this, I wanted to support every claim that I make with some concrete research findings, and these are all actual, uh, experimental research, which are, quantitative in nature. Uh, but then, there's a caution here that every time we're talking about using mobile technology, networking tools, and social networking, there always comes a word of caution that always comes, creating the support mechanism, conducive environment. So, mobile technology should be supplemented with institutional support. So, what if you want to use mobile phones in the classroom and your principal doesn't allow it? And look at our general behavior in the classroom. Every time a student sees a mobile phone, we think of kicking them out of the class. We seize the mobile phone. Student comes begging, because these days a mobile phone is as good as a human organ. Just as you can't move out of your house without your kidneys, you can't move out of your house without a phone. So institutional support in terms of, let's say, continuous internet connectivity, uh, maybe training to the staff and student, all of that is needed, and a robust ICT policy which allows judicious use of cell phones in teaching and learning. For example, even in my traditional class, I have always been using something very effectively. We ask this question, if Google answers every question, why do you need a teacher? So what I do in my class is, not in each class, but a lot of times I ask them questions which Google cannot answer, and I give them an open hand that search for an answer in Google or whatever search engine that helps you out. So, uh, and teachers' exposure to technology is very essential. The possibility that the students learn on their own was seen in this study, because then uh, uh, so these are number of experiments that I wanted each one of you to look at, and I wanted to support everything that I'm speaking right now with some empirical findings. Uh, Now, these are some more examples of how to use WhatsApp in online teaching. One of the first things that we do or think of when we think of WhatsApp is, forming groups. These groups can be formed with various dynamics. Uh, these groups can be helpful in interacting with students, and these groups can become amazing tools of collaborative learning. And we could see the examples where, right from, for example, uh, role plays to delivering content using WhatsApp groups. Uh, there was a role play where there were plaintiffs, judges, and uh, there were arguments. So forming groups, simply forming groups can be used as a very, very effective tool for collaborative learning. Beyond just exchanging information, it can become an amazing tool for language learning, if you ask me that way. Uh, WhatsApp can be used for broadcasts and announcements. Sometimes uh, you can share a wonderful poetry with your students using a broadcast. Broadcast can be of any other announcement that you want to make. Can be used for sharing information, share audio, video. Uh, we are now living in an online era of teaching. Now, we have been preparing online content, especially those who are in school. So you can have your own session recorded, broadcast it, or put it in the group and ask students to respond to that. You can then choose videos from the World Wide Web and share this video with students. But then, if it has to have the educational purpose, you will always have to think of what do you expect the students to do beyond listening to this video in terms of, now that would mean designing some exercises. So you can have a quiz followed by a video that you are sending, or you can simply ask them to write a summary of what they listen. You can ask them to evaluate. There has to be some response that is generated out of this. You can you can share links, for example. Uh, if needed, I would share the link of all the research papers that I have used to make this presentation and give examples. Uh, Chat platforms can be used for problem solving, critical thinking, and interpersonal communication. So, chats uh, can then be within the group used as a learning exercise, as it was used in the role play where the court was put into a WhatsApp group, and then there's this provision of audio visual calls, which would allow a lot of interaction, in two-way audio visual interactivity. Now, as with everything good, there are challenges. And some of these challenges that I have identified here are attitude of all the stakeholders. So when we talk of networking tools or social networking websites, if a learner goes home and says that my teacher has asked me to remain on a WhatsApp group and do an exercise, parents would not listen. They would not agree. They may refuse. They may raise question as to our kids are always with mobile phone because some crazy teacher is asking them to do some exercise on WhatsApp. Sometimes principal, management would not agree. So, as I said, social networking and social media per se is stigmatized. It is always seen as a place where people are busy chatting and wasting time. But then it can be used for a wonderful participating learning experience, as we could see in many of these examples. There's always the resistance to change. Look, friends, uh, it all sounds goody-goody when we say X can be done, Y can be done. Um, we can say that every time we say that online teaching brings in all kinds of opportunities. But online teaching and maybe integrating networking tools are a challenge also, because as teachers we'll have to work more. I was referring to this yesterday. It was easy to walk into a class and start teaching with a text in the hand, or probably if you have taught the same text, the next time you go to the class, you're completely aware of every aspect of the text. So you just walk and talk. Now, that is not what online teaching is. That is not what integration of networking tools is. Because then you'll have to sit down, plan, you'll have to sit down and innovate. You will have to work yourself so that your students work. And all of us, when it comes to coming out of our comfort zone, there is a resistance. We don't like doing new things. We don't like taking pains. When I say we, I'm including myself into that. We have to push ourselves, to do things. One of the other challenges is access to technology. This remains one of the challenges, uh, you know, as far as entire online landscape of education is concerned. There are no easy solutions, but you know, uh, I don't know. I mean, the capacity building exercises are on. Uh, we can uh, motivate our learners to use internet connectivity judiciously, not waste it in watching a movie, and keep some internet data for doing an exercise like this. Because then when you're doing audio visual activities in WhatsApp, upload and download would mean a lot of data. So many people may not have cell phones. How are we going to deal with this? Maybe we can motivate that learner to go to a learner who has a cell phone. That sort of collaboration, that sort of it all depends on how you communicate it to your learners. If you say that those who don't have phones would group with those people who have phone and easy access to internet, we are partially solving the problem. We're not permanently solving the problem though. Access to high-speed internet. Now, this also becomes one of the challenges, as data packs have their costs and not everyone have the luxury to have 1 GB, 1.5 GB every day. Unlimited internet is these are all things which require attention. We cannot simply say that if you don't have an internet, you don't participate. As I said, we'll have to ask them to collaborate, create their own groups where one person shares internet through a hotspot with other learners, and they are also then benefiting from the activity. Flooding of non-academic information. Now, this is one of the major challenges when you're talking about networking tools used in education. And how are we going to solve this problem? How are we going to deal with, because every time we form a group, even of teachers, let's say, the floodgates of motivation, the floodgates of birthday wishes, the floodgates of sharing unnecessary content begins. So even with teachers who are supposed to be maturer than the students, this flooding of non-academic information, flooding of irrelevant information, if I put it that way, remains one of the major challenges. So, How are we going to deal with this? My suggestion is to deal with uh, all of these problems would mean counseling and motivation. You will have to motivate your learners. You will have to show them how beneficial these activities are. You will have to show them how constructive these activities are, and you'll have to convince them to a judicious use. Only then, I think, this becomes uh, a very constructive integration. Otherwise, it can become a very destructive integration. Breach of privacy. Now, there is a threat to privacy also. Um, Within the group, for example, if it is a heterogeneous group of both the genders, girls and boys, girls' numbers would be passed on to others and they would be used for sending messages and all that. So there should be policies to control this breach of privacy. And all the time, it's easy to win people with roses than swords. And sword has failed. If you look at the history of mankind, so you can't just have simply rules, but then our learners should be motivated to judiciously use these social networking tools. Cyberbullying becomes one of the problems when you think of social media in education. Interference and distractions. I could say, today, if you honestly ask me, you would see a different background than what I was using previously. I changed this office because this has uninterrupted electricity and uninterrupted internet. But when I ensured all this, there was a glass of water which played a villain in this session and disrupted this session. And I was really worried that if something goes wrong with my laptop now, it would mean 10-15 minutes by the time you get hold of another machine, you put a presentation in that, and then I connect back. By the time many of you would have gone to sleep. So there are these challenges, but then it didn't stop me from delivering my session. Each one of you were wondering uh, where the hell this resource person disappeared. Now this is my last slide. We had seen this gentleman uh, from West Bengal. I have another teacher who is rising against all the odds that you can visualize. See the level of commitment and see the level of innovation. Now, never underestimate the power of a teacher is my message. These were some of the ideas that I could accumulate for all of you. I am slightly apologetic, sorry about the inconvenience that was caused because of an unexpected accident in an ongoing class. There are accidents in ongoing classes though, but this was of a very peculiar kind. So thank you all very much. These are the words that I've cited, and I am done with my presentation. I'd love to respond to some of the questions if we have some.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir, for such a valuable information you have given, sir. We learned popular networking tools, how to use these tools in our education. Mobile technology has a significant potential in both teaching and learning, right, sir? And nowadays it is part and parcel of our life. And the last pictures you have shown that can never underestimate the power of teacher. We are the creators, right, sir? So don't underestimate teachers. They can do anything in any situation, right, sir?
Yeah. Even when the glass falls, the teachers can continue the lectures.
Yes. Right, sir. And there are some questions, sir, if you permit us. Yeah. So first question is, will students find this boring after initial exposure?
That is a challenge.
Yes.
And I'm happy somebody has asked this question. I should have discussed this. Yes, this is a challenge. Initially, anything new has a lot of participation. But then how to deal with this? We'll have to keep innovating. We'll have to keep inventing new activities, and that is where our challenge is to. Uh, and that is why I said that this is not going to be easy. This is going to be challenging. Challenging
Yes.
for the fact that, well, there are pedagogical issues, and then, as someone rightly visualized, it can become redundant. It can become monotonous. So, to deal with this monotony, I have two suggestions. One is you will have to keep your learners motivated, because sometimes, the age-old wisdom says, repetition is mother of all learning. So you'll have to tell them that you'll have to keep repeating this because there are benefits. And the second is high level of motivation. So if they are motivated enough, we'll be able to deal with this, issue of monotony and redundance.
Right, sir.
At least that is how I try to deal with it if it sips
Yeah.
in.
Yes, sir. Similar kind of question is there, sir. Some students find online education boring. What can be done for that? I think some of the points you have covered in your
Make it
previous answer.
interesting. Only thing that you can do is make it
Make
interesting.
it
That is where the
interest,
challenge is.
make it interactive.
Make it interactive, make it
Yeah.
collaborative. I think
Yes.
within this last 2 days, that has been my message, that it's your own readiness, it's your own commitment.
Yeah.
If all of you find my class boring, I'll have to do something. I'm very happy that Madam had shared her feedback with me, and I'm happy that you were happy. So thank you for being happy, because when you listen to someone, you're not always happy. So you
No.
are a motivated lot of colleagues. I won't call you learners. You're all my colleagues, and it's not teaching, it's more an interaction. Any other
Yeah.
question?
Yeah, one more question, sir. Teacher faces the challenges of quality in online learning. What are your inputs?
Online learning.
Yeah, sorry, online teaching.
Okay. All right.
Uh,
So
Quality issue means what they can deliver in their offline lecture or face-to-face lecture. Something is lacking in online teaching. So what are your suggestions? What are your inputs?
suggestions remain more or less same. One way to maintain quality of the content that we deliver is, look, suddenly things have changed, even for me, for her, for everyone. Today, it would have been more easy for me to deliver this class if I was available at a venue somewhere on a podium, and if all of you were available to me. But then, I had to sit down and think of, for example, I could have simply discussed my ideas with you. But today I brought in some concrete papers. That meant that I had to sit for about 5, 10 hours and identify that, well, these are some of the papers which can help my. So if I have some concrete, solid content to support my claims, everyone will find it interesting. The second, I would remind everyone of the fact that you will have to have a good delivery. Your communication should be good. Your content should be good. And if you're not, I mean, in your own analysis, if you feel you need to improve your communication, do it. What are we waiting for? I keep improving myself every day. That's the way out.
Right, sir. So these were the questions, sir. Thank you very much for your valuable answers, sir.
All right.
And yeah, we are ending our session. And thank you very much, sir, for delivering such a nice lecture. We learned a lot.
It was a
Thank you.
pleasure. It was a pleasure. And the gain is from both sides, because uh, I would take a minute to pay tribute to my teacher, Professor Avdesh Kumar Singh. Uh, a scholar of international reputation, he used to say every time he used to take a lecture uh, on national platforms, he used to say that I always enjoy when some organizers give me challenging topics, because those challenging topics lead me to library, read and prepare and then deliver. So this was one such session. This was given to me by Professor Bose, uh, at Sim Patel Institute of Research and Training. I had prepared this session so that I could use it for this audience. So I remember Professor Singh and Professor Bose, who were the reason why I had to sit down and read on all of this. Uh, because when I started thinking of, a session, beyond few ideas, I didn't have more to say. So where do I go? I read some research papers and I thought they would be interesting that I share with you. Thank you all very much. It was thorough pleasure to talk to you for close to 3 hours, 2 days. I once again thank the organizers, uh, the entire scope team, the director, sir, and the government of Gujarat for this opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thankful to you, sir. Thank you. Namaste.